bit of interesting history for you and the significance of today. Today is the 4th of April. If you've been around 99 years ago today and were one of the many holders of shares in Manchester City FC, you'd been waking up to your postman delivering you a letter from the manager. Yes, it was on this day in 1921 that club manager and secretary Ernest Mangnall sent out numerous letters to City shareholders asking for their help. Mangnall's letter was a request for all shareholders to send back their share certificates so as the club could re-record the information contained on them. Ernest Mangnall, the only man to have managed both Manchester clubs, by the way. The request was made and necessary following the catastrophic blaze which had completely gutted the Hyde Road ground main stand, leaving nothing but charred wood on the mud embankments. As a consequence, all club ledgers had been lost. Today we have a copy of the actual letter sent out by Ernest Mangnall for you, and this is how it read. Dear Sir, owing to the disastrous fire which occurred on the club's ground on the 10th November last, when most of the principal books and papers relating to the club were destroyed, your directors find it necessary to call in all the share certificates issued by the company for the purpose of preparing an accurate record of the present shareholders. We should be glad, therefore, if you would kindly forward in the enclosed addressed and stamped envelope to our auditors, Messrs. Hindle and Jepson, the certificates of shares held by you in the company, so that the same may be checked and verified by them. The certificate will be returned to you within a couple of days of its receipt. When sending the certificate, we should be glad if you could fill up and send to Messrs. Hindle and Jepson the enclosed form, giving the address where the certificate and future letters should be addressed to you. Kindly give this your immediate attention, as we are anxious to have the list complete before the annual meeting. Yours faithfully, for the directors, J. E. Mangnall, Secretary. It must have been quite a thing to have the manager of Manchester City personally write to you, even though the circumstances were somewhat sad. It is also interesting to note that in the letter, Mangnall refers to the date of the fire as being the 10th of November, when other archive reports state the fire took place on the day after bonfire night, which was the 6th of November. Following the fire at the ground, City remained there for another couple of years. The blaze did, however, speed up the process of City leaving the ground for good, when in truth they had outgrown the Hyde Road base, and because of its location, expansion was impossible. Main Road was completed and operational for the start of the 1923-24 season, and the last City League match played at Hyde Road was a fixture against Newcastle United on the 28th of April 1923. There was a public practice match played on the Hyde Road pitch in August 1923, and that was the last time it was used. Over the next decade, the ground was dismantled, destroyed, and all traces of it disappeared, although parts of it were used elsewhere. The roof of the new main stand was sold to Halifax Town and erected as the Shea, where even today part of the Hyde Road roof is still in place. Here we have some other facts and trivia that you may find interesting about the Hyde Road ground. There were no changing room facilities at the ground. The teams got changed at the Hyde Road Hotel Public House. This is also where the club had held business meetings. This public house was owned by Chester's Brewery, who paid for the first seating area in the ground, 1,000 seats. This was in exchange for being the sole provider of alcohol in the ground. In 1913, a cup tie against Sunderland was abandoned by the referee after a Sunderland goal in the 58th minute. The crowd was so large that it was spilling over onto the pitch. One player remarked, "Before half-time there were 3 or 4 yards inside the touchline." An FA inquiry afterwards gave rise to the debate about crowd control at sporting events. The use of mounted police was a particularly contentious issue, with the chairman of the committee stating, "If the ball struck a horse and the creature plunged amongst the people, who was to be held responsible for the injuries that may accrue?" On the 27th of March 1920, the ground became the first football venue outside of London to be visited by a reigning monarch. King George V attended the ground to watch a match between Manchester City and Liverpool. City won 2-1 in front of 32,000 fans thanks to 2 goals from Horace Barnes. And so we come to the end of this small video and hope you found it interesting and informative. Hyde Road runs from the Ardwick Green area of Manchester out towards Hyde to the east of the city. It's a long road and was always notorious for the sheer amount of public housing along its route. We leave you with some images of the Hyde Road ground, the Hyde Road Hotel and some of the teams who played there. Also, we have what we believe is the only video footage of a football match being played there. This was in October 1905 and is probably the oldest film record of an international football game. England versus Ireland in an interleague game which England would go on to win 4-0. The film is silent, so we'll play out with a song from local comedian, the late Bob Williamson, telling of one of his visits to the many pubs which once stood on Hyde Road's pavements. Stay safe, people. Look after each other. We will get through this.
I went down to Sammy's bar. Hey, the lampposts are leaning. Just went out to have a jar on me way up Hyde Road. I'd only had a pint or two when the lamppost started leaning in the way that lampposts do, all the way up Hyde Road. So I moved on to bottle stout. Hey, the lampposts are leaving, the buggers keep moving about, all the way up Hyde Road. Either I'm completely canned, or the lampposts are leaving. One just stood upon me hand on its way up Hyde Road. Must find me car, it's closing time. Me and the lampposts are leaving, but the pavement's so hard to climb up the north face of Hyde Road. I drove away from Sammy's bar as the lampposts were leaving, and one jumped out and hit me car and ran away up Hyde Road. They must have drunk too much light ale, the way the lampposts are leaning. Why is it me that's here in jail and them that's free on Hyde Road?